Okay, in the last lecture, I talked about the demand for the Constituent Assembly. And today we'll talk about the composition the and function of the Constituent Assembly. So in this lecture, I'm going to talk about how the Constituent Assembly was formed in India, and the next thing, the socio-political. I'm going to explain the socio-political context against the formation of a separate constituent assembly for India will help to understand the political and social currents of undivided India, the flavor of which is still bothering Indian politics. And the third thing that I will discuss uh, will try to unveil a detailed fact file related to the formation and the composition of the Constituent Assembly. And the fourth thing we'll discuss the role of the Constituent Assembly in framing the Constitution of India has been discussed in detail so as to reveal the story of the nation building in newly independent India. So I'm going to talk about all these things. So in this lecture, I will be dealing with the composition and functions of the Constituent Assembly of India. In the last lecture, I had given some hints towards the formation of the Constituent Assembly, which was actually not conducive for having a constitution for the Indian mass, the peasants, the workers, the poor, and the middle class. Let us start with the formation of the Constituent Assembly, how it was constituted, what was the nature of the Constituent Assembly, so that we can understand better the deficit in the Constituent Assembly and the positives. To begin with, it was the best possible solution, keeping in view the situation of 1946. Ultimately, the Constituent Assembly was formed following the negotiation between the Indian leaders, both from the Congress and the Muslim League, and the members of the Cabinet Mission of 1946. Cabinet Mission came to India to deal with the issue of transfer of power. The Constituent Assembly was framed as per the arrangement suggested by the Cabinet Mission. That is, a Cabinet Mission is a representative body sent from the Great Britain. So we'll talk about what was the arrangement of this representative body. 292 members were to be elected through the provincial legislature, provincial legislative assembly, 93 members to represent the Indian princely estates, and 4 members to represent the chief commissioner provinces. So the total membership that was proposed was 389. In June 1947, the delegation from the provinces of Sindh, East Bengal, Baluchistan, West Punjab, and Northwest Frontier provinces withdrew. Why did they withdraw from the Constituent Assembly? It was due to the pressure created by the Muslim League for having their own state and to form their own Constituent Assembly. This uh, they held a meeting in Karachi on 15th August 1947. The dominion of India and the dominion of Pakistan became independent. Members of the Constituent Assembly who had not withdrawn to Karachi became India's parliament. So, Constituent Assembly for India started acting as Parliament of India, which was to be a sovereign body. Following the independence of the nation, only 28 members of the Muslim League finally joined the Indian Assembly. And later, 93 members were nominated from the princely estates. The Congress secured a majority of 72% in the House. It was often been criticized as the Congress Assembly. The Constituent Assembly was criticized as the Congress Assembly because of the huge representation of the Congress in the Constituent Assembly. So, this was the introduction part of this lecture. So, I briefed you all these things. Till now, do you have any doubt?
No, sir.
So already I briefed you about this and arrangements regarding the member from the provincial and the Indian princely and the chief provinces and the total member in the Constituent Assembly who was proposed to be 389 and this August 15, 1947. So we'll look into this details, the data, okay? The minority representation in the assembly, okay? So first I will show you the data related to that and then I will explain all these things in one go. Minority representation in the assembly. If you will look Nepal 1 from the Sikh community. So here the members are from the minority community. They will represent that particular community. So one member will be from the Nepali community, 5 member will be from the Sikh community, and the 3 member from the Parsi community, 7 from the Christian community, and 3 from the Anglo-Indians. and five will represent the backward tribe, and 31 will represent the Muslims, and 33 scheduled caste. So out of 389, 88 members will be there from the minority to represent the minority in the Constituent Assembly. So now we'll look into the representation in the Constituent Assembly from the Indian state. Alwar, from Alwar, there will be one representative, Baroda 3, Bhopal 1, Bikaner 1, Cochin 1, Gwalior 4, Indore 1, Jaipur 3, Jodhpur 2, and Kolhapur 1. And now we'll move on to the data, the state-wide membership of the Constituent Assembly of India. So from Madras, there will be 49 representatives in the Constituent Assembly. Similarly, in Bombay, 21, from Bombay, 21, West Bengal, 19, United Provinces, 55, East Punjab, 12, Bihar, 36, Berar, 17, Assam 8, Odisha 9, Delhi 1, Ajmer, Mewar 1, Coorg 1, uh, another states Kota 1, Mayurbhanj 1, Mysore 7, Patiala 2, Rewa 2, Travancore 6, Udaipur 2, Sikkim and Cooch Behar Group 1, Tripura, Manipur, and Khasi Estates 1, and United Provinces States Group 1. Uh, Another Indian states, Eastern Rajputana State Groups 3, Central India States Group, including this Malwa and the Bundelkhand 3, Western Indian States Group 4, Gujarat States Group 2, Deccan and Madras State Group 2, Punjab State Group 1, Eastern State Group 1, 4 member. From here, the Deccan Madras State Group 2, Punjab State Group 1, 3 members, Eastern State Group 1, 4 members, Eastern State Group 2, 3 members, Residuary States Group, 4 members. So these were the numerical details, data, and the facts related to the representatives in the Constituent Assembly from the different states and the minority community. And among the minority community, you have seen 8 minority subgroups like Nepali, Sikh, Parsi, Christian, Anglo-Indian, backward tribe, Muslim, scheduled caste. So we'll explain this. Constituent Assembly. As a result of the partition under the Mountbatten Plan of 3rd June 1947, as you know, a separate Constituent Assembly was framed for Pakistan and members of Indian Constituent Assembly, left for framing the Constitution of India. So, as I discussed yesterday, Lord Mountbatten took the position of Lord Webble, the outgoing viceroy, to expedite the process of the transfer of the power. What was the seat distribution? The data which I showed you. Congress swept the general seat in the provincial election. So at that point of the time, the provincial election happened and the Congress swept the general seats. I'm talking about the general seat. And the Muslim League captured most of the reserved Muslim seats. So Of the total 1585 seats in the provincial assemblies, the Congress owned or secured 925 seats. That is 58% of the seat, which was actually 85% of the non-Muslim seats. Therefore, in July 1946, elections to the assembly, league members refers to the Muslim League members, secured all of the 7 seats reserved for the Muslims. So, in the Muslim seat, Muslim League members dominated. But Muslim League decided to boycott the Constituent Assembly and went for a separate Constituent Assembly and a separate constitution. But sorry, socialists were initially not ready to join, but later they joined. Why did they deny joining? Why the socialists were denying to join the Constituent Assembly? Because they felt that it was the creation of the British colonial rule. However, ultimately they joined the assembly as they took it as the best possible opinion, best possible option. And then partition occurred. So the now question comes, what happened after the partition? This arrangement was changed, which I told you now. This 69% representation from the Congress was changed. Why? The Muslim League's members left the body. So it came down to 28. The Congress membership thus jumped to 82%. The Constituent Assembly for Independent Divided India started its work with 82% majority in the body, and it was rather criticized as the Congress Assembly because 82% of the members of the Constituent Assembly were the members of the Congress. That's why the critic says that it was the Congress Assembly. Election of 296 seats assigned to British India provinces were completed by August 1946, and the Congress initially held 69% of all the seats, while Muslim League held almost the majority of the seats assigned, uh, majority of the seats designated for the Muslims or reserved for the Muslims. As you know, there was the communal representation. The seats were reserved. But after the partition, it became was domi- after the partition, it was dominated by the Congress people. So, okay. So I explained the scenario uh, here till 1946. Okay, the election, and now whatever the data I told you related to all those things, the representation in, so we'll explain it in bit details. Uh, so do you have any doubt till now?
No, sir.
Okay. If anyone is joining late, tell them to wait for a moment because it's difficult to join, accept them in between. So we'll move on to we'll explain related to this. So now we'll talk about the representation in the assembly. In the assembly, there were other representatives like Indian Christians had seven representatives. There were three Anglo Indians, three Parsis, and so on. You can uh, read this chart, which is in front of you. After the partition, minority representation was as follows. So you can look into the table which is in front of you: Nepali 1, Sikh 5, Parsi 3, Christian 7, Anglo Indian 3, backward tribe 5, Muslims 31, scheduled caste 33. By clubbing all this, minorities had 88 representatives out of 235 allotted seats in the provinces, and that is 37% of the provincial members. Still, it was criticized that it was a Congress assembly, but it was not a party with one voice. It Congress assimilated members of the different caste and creed, having different values and ideologies, right from the extreme right vision up to the left or socialist vision. So in 1939, Jawaharlal Nehru quoted in Unity of India, page number 139, that Congress had within its fold many groups. You will find different groups inside the Congress, widely differing in their viewpoints and ideologies. This is natural and inevitable if the Congress is to be the mirror of the nation. This was the word used by Pandit Nehru. Actually, there was no other option but to accept Congress as the mirror of the nation. There were two major parties at that point of the time: the Indian the Congress and the Muslim League. Following the partition, Muslim League left, so the Congress was only there to play in the battlefield. Congress always gave importance to the senior members as it did in the formation of the Constituent Assembly. There were six past and present Congress presidents at that point, like Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad. They were party's top senior leaders. Apart from them, Congress invited Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, a well-known legal expert, to be the chairman of the drafting committee. B.R. Ambedkar was not a member of the Congress. Rather, he was the opponent of the Congress party, but he invited to be the chairperson of the drafting committee. There were some other members like Kanailal Munshi, Purushottam Mavalankar, Sandeep Kumar Patel, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, Syama Prasad Mukherjee, Nalini Ranjan Ghosh, and so on. Of course, Congress incorporated many prominent women leaders like Sarojini Naidu, Hansa Mehta, Durgabai Deshmukh, Rajkumari Amrit Kaur, Vijayalakshmi Pandit, and so on. Dr. Sachidanand Sinha was the first president of the Constituent Assembly when it met on 9th December 1946. Sachidanand Sinha was made temporary chairman, and then after Dr. Rajendra Prasad became the president of the Constituent Assembly. The vice president of the Constituent Assembly was Professor Harendra Kumar Mukherjee, a former vice chancellor of Calcutta University and a prominent Christian leader from Bengal. He served as the chairman of the Constituent Assembly's minority community, and he was appointed governor of West Bengal when India became a republic.
Sir, are you going to share this PDF on LMS?
PPT.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll share this.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
So, this PPT is visible to you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Uh, Already I shared the academic script as well. I will share it also. Assembly met for the first time in New Delhi on 9th December 1946, and the last session of the assembly was held on 24th January 1950. And one state the hope behind the assembly expressed by Jawaharlal Nehru. Uh, what was the hope behind the Constituent Assembly? So it was expressed by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. You can see on the screen. The first task of this assembly is to free India through a new constitution, to feed the starving people. As you know, at that point of the time, there was just before the independence, the Bengal famine and the shortage of the food in India, and to clothe the naked masses. There was so much poverty and misery in India, and to give every Indian the fullest opportunity to develop himself according to his capacity. So everyone must get the opportunity. There will be no discrimination on the line of caste, creed, religion, and so on. So if you will look into the session of the Constituent Assembly, the first session, total 11 session held, and the first session 9 to 23rd December 1946 and 20 to 25th January. So do you have any confusion till now? Can you speak?
यस सर।
What?
सर ये सारे फैक्ट्स याद करने,
कौन से फैक्ट?
ये जितना भी डेटा आपने बताया है कि
This is for your reference, but whatever I said and I explained, you just have to keep in the mind the total strength of the Constituent Assembly and how much were the Congress member and the how much were the Muslim League. Understood? And you have to just remember that there were 88 members to represent the minority sections. Understood? So
Okay, sir.
now we'll talk about assembly work progress, how the work of the assembly has processed. You must have heard about the eminent bureaucrat and jurist Sir Benigil Narsim Rao, who was appointed as the constitutional advisor of the Constituent Assembly. He had a very important role in framing or drafting the Constitution. Sir Benigil Narsim Rao actually prepared the original draft of the Constitution and was later appointed a judge in the Permanent Court of International Justice. What was the state-wise membership of the Constituent Assembly? On 31st December 1947, I have shown you the data. India has already been partitioned. From the provinces, there were 229 members who were represented the Constituent Assembly. Madras 49, Bombay 21, West Bengal 19, and the United Province 55. East Punjab 12, Bihar 36, and so on. All total, there were 299 members. So now the question comes, how did the Constituent Assembly start its work? The Constituent Assembly consisted of indirectly elected representatives, and it was set for drafting a constitution for India. On 9th December 1946, the Assembly met for the first time. The last session of the Assembly was held on 24th January 1950. And over this long period, that is 2 years, 11 months, and 17 days. So the Constituent Assembly took how much time? 2 years, 11 months, 17 days, and held 11 sessions, sitting on a total of 166 days. Of these, 114 days were spent on the consideration of and the discussion on draft constitution. So the draft constitution was prepared and discussions were held for 114 days. What was the hope behind the Assembly's work progress? In the words of Jawaharlal Nehru, the first task of the Assembly is to free India through a new constitution, to feed the starving people and to clothe the naked masses, and to give every Indian the fullest opportunity to develop himself according to his capacity. Already I explained this. With the vision, elections for the seats held and Constituent Assembly came into being. In the first meeting, around 207 representatives were present, including a very good number of women representatives. So now I'm going to talk about stages of assembly work. There were five stages. Can you able to see the PPT?
Yes, sir.
So you see the session of the Constituent Assembly, the details. Okay, the 11th session hail date and the year has mentioned here. Started the first session started in December 1946, and the last session, 11th session, held in November 1949. Okay, and you can see some of the committee and the chairman. Committee on the rules of the procedure, Rajendra Prasad. Steering committee, Rajendra Prasad. Finance and staff committee, Rajendra Prasad. Credential committee, Alladi Krishnami Swami Iyer. House committee, B. Patavai Sitarmaya. Order of the business committee, K. M. Munzi. And ad hoc committee on the national flag, Dr. Rajendra Prasad. Committee on the functions of the Constituent Assembly. The topic which we are talking about, G.V. Mavalankar was the chairman. State Committee, Advisory Committee, State Committee, Jawaharlal Nehru, and Advisory Committee uh, on States, Vallabhbhai Patel. And another committee, you can look into that, the Fundamental Rights, G.B. Kripalani, and many more committees are here. You look into that. So we'll move on to this. The member of the drafting committee of the Constitution, where Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was the chairman, and Alladi Krishnami Swami Iyer, were about him I talked about, and another member in that, and Sir Benegal Narsingh Rao was appointed as the constitutional advisor, and other committees. The legal advisor of the Maharaja of Baroda, B.L. Mittal, resigned the committee, and he was replaced by Madhav Rao. And this is the first cabinet of the independent India. I'm just going to talk about this. Okay, so I'm going to talk about this, the last thing. Assembly work was organized into five stages. You can see the five stages here. Uh, there were number of committees, and these committees were asked to present a report on the basic issue. So what were these committees? Like the Fundamental Right Committee, United Province Committee, apart from the Drafting Committee, Committee for Discussion on Federal Issues. There were many other committees. There were almost 13 committees and few subcommittees. These committees were asked to present a report on basic issues. Second thing, the constitutional advisor B.N. Rao prepared an initial draft on the basis of these committees' reports and his own research into the constitution of other countries. The Indian Constitution incorporated many things from the Western Constitution. It was a matter of doubt whether it would properly address the very indigenous problem of India. The drafting committee, chaired by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, presented a detailed public discussion were held and comments were invited, but critics argued that these were not all incorporated in the Constitution itself. Even in the debates, Dr. Ambedkar was often criticized for his bossing approach. The draft constitution was discussed and the amendment was proposed and enacted. The constitution was adopted. A committee of experts led by the Congress party, called the Congress Assembly Party, played a very critical role in this respect. So this way we'll conclude. Finally, the Indian Constitution prepared. At the time of the commencement, the Constitution had 395 articles in 22 parts and 8 schedules. And it consists of almost 80,000 words. And took 2 years, 11 months, 18 days to build. So this way, the composition and the function of the Constituent Assembly is over. So despite all limitations, all problems Constituent Assembly had to face it, actually gifted us a constitution for the independent sovereign nation. And when the Constitution of India came into force on 26 January 1950, it repealed the Indian Independence Act, and India ceased to be a dominion of British Crown and became a sovereign democratic republic. So the lecture on the composition and the function of the Constituent Assembly is over.